Okay, the next section of this video, before we go over your specifications, this is for the design document on creating it, and I'll pull you up one by one while you guys are working on your design documents, is how to create a your actual class diagrams. Now I'm actually going to create my system design document here, and I'll also add all the screenshots of my GUI design. I'll start doing that kind of stuff in here. Now, the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to have to come up with our class design. Now, for our class design, you all know, and I explained to this on the board, but you'll always have, you generally follow a single structure. And what I mean that is you'll generally have and I'm going to draw it with shapes, let's just do text boxes for now. You'll generally all have a GUI component, and from the GUI component you would have an instance of a manager component or working manager class. So you'd often follow similar structures to this. So I'll then have a manager class. So you'd have a manager class. So your GUI would create an instance you manage, and you keep your working completely separate from your other areas. So I'm going to now add another drawing of just a line to show you that this GUI class creates an instance of your manager class. Now, on from there, your manager class would have an array of your entity class. And your grade 12s, you all got work to do. Please keep it down. You can watch what I'm sort of doing, or you can do your own work, but it must be work related. Yes, I'm doing this first so people can finish the design document while I call you guys up, because some people might get to the stage that I just had a long explanation just now on the reason why I was doing this right now. Okay, and then you'll also need a storage manager. So now on your storage manager, your storage manager, this class is done for you. So this is your base structure, and what would happen from there is you would also create, in my case, I'm going to have a GUI, and I'm going to have to manage my my questions, answers, my crossword manager, and my entity would be question Q&A. So the questions and answers for that question that's gone, and the storage manager would be there. And on from there, I would have a grid and so forth. I might have to look at making it a bit more complicated later, but for now, this is my class diagram that I've got. So I'll just show that this is being linked to each other, and this is an array. So I'm just going to add like a little text box at the top there that'll just show that this is an array. Just for my own notes, this is purely just so I can keep track and I can show you guys what my base concept is. So shape fill will be no fill, shape outline will be no outline. So that's just showing me that I've got an array of, I can say 1 to n, meaning that there is one manager class would have many question and answers inside it. So that's all I've done here is I've just created a little relationship showing that I'll have one manager, many of that, and then there will be a one-to-one here to my storage manager. So they'll be separating things out into the logical object components within there. Okay. So on this logical components that we're working with here, remove this links to here. This is the base of what we're doing, and this is just the concept of storing a thing. We get all the questions answered together. We will then generate the crossword. We're not looking at, once we've generated the crossword, we're not looking at about how to do that yet. We've just got the basic structure. But when I've got all the question answers, I could generate a 2 by 2 grid and then send that through here. So that could literally just be a 2D array of characters. So I'm not going to bother in the class diagram. So this is my base of, I think this is even called a, there's actually a term for it, UML diagram. This is just the basic layout of my actual class that I'm going to have there. Now underneath that, now I'm going to get into my individual class diagrams. So the first class diagram I want to put is my GUI class diagram. I'm then going to put my manager class diagram. I am then going to have to create my Q&A class diagram. I am then also going to have to create my storage manager. So you would first come up with a concept here in the UML manager. Now unfortunately, what I suggest you guys do to make your life easier at a later stage is you wait until you see these and you add everything together, and then what you can do is you can group these. So if you group them, they now become one individual object, so it makes it easier to move around and to manage. So if I say that it's can be, I can then move it around easier as far as the whole object is concerned. I can move it down, change where I want it to be. So that makes my life easier as far as managing it as an object is concerned, unless you forget one object to add it into the group, in which case it just becomes annoying. So then you can group them back together. Now that arrows also there. Yeah. So, and we got our storage. Those are my main four GUI, my main four classes. So I know I always want to keep my GUI separate. This all should do the working. So I can even draw a line, just so you can indicate your marker that you've got this touch. I could even draw a line there and indicate that this is indicate something here saying user interface GUI, working. You can also potentially have more than one GUI class. Like some people like to do their frames, separate frames as separate classes. I prefer to do it all in one, just because it makes for easier management and working between the different GUI objects. Okay, so now my GUI class will always, all our class diagrams would contain a table of 3 columns. The first, actually even only 2. So I'm going to insert a table 2. So we'd have our fields, or our attributes, or our properties, whatever you want to call them. You then have your methods. Now I know that my fields that I'm going to have in my GUI is definitely a manager class, and this will be private. So I'll have an instance of my manager called mman, so manager man. Anyway, I'm just going to call it man. And then I know from here I don't want to have to redo all the fields. So what I can do is I can open up my crosswords project and the GUI inside there that I created in the earlier video, and every single one of these things inside the inspector is actually a field. Each of these J panels is a field. Every single one of these objects is a field. I do not expect you to come up with every single one of these. It's quite insane to do. So what I'm going to do is, instead of re-typing out all of these, I'm going to move it into a bit of a bigger window, and I want to take a screenshot of it once it's all plussed. I think it's going to even be too insane for there, but at least it will allow me some more information on there. So these are the fields that I've got here. There's tons that we just dragged and dropped here, but every single one of these, if you go into the source code, you'll notice there that each one of these has been generated. It is a declared field. So technically we have to include them in our class diagram because they are on there. Now I don't want you to write in every single one of these because damn, that would just take too long. So what I would suggest you do is you take this. I'm just going to take a print screen and I'm going to crop different sections of it off. I'm going to use it on my high resolution screen just so it'll allow me to fit in more, and then I'll bring it back onto there. So I'm going to do my first one now. This is until JPanel 12. So I'm going to do an alt print screen. I would suggest you, what I like to do, and when I run it anyway, is I then run MS Paint. I then would take the Paint object in our program, which I've lost my mouse already. I'd paste it into here, and then here's my thing on the right hand side. I would then take a section of this. Now you can see I haven't managed to get all of it into one, but I have got a lot of it in. So all the way from here down here, this is my process. I've gone to JPanel 12. So just remember where I go to just before JPanel 12. I'm going to copy that. I'm then going to paste it into my system design document there. Now, there is actually also, I'm going to split this column into, so I'm going to choose this, make this GUI on a new page so it doesn't separate it like that. It is quite insane, this, and you're also technically meant to have an explanation on the right hand side. So for this table, I'm going to split the cells to be 2 columns. And I want to put here, I would say there, firstly I would want an explanation for my fman. So I'd say there, my manager instance of, so here would be just explanations. Instance of my manager class to do working. And then you'll just have the all GUI object instances. You don't need to add more of an explanation for every single one because you've done that in your GUI layout anyway, so you don't have to repeat that. Now, I know this is quite large, and if anything, I think this might be a bit overkill. So now I've got to do my next one, which is my after form 2. So I've formed from 12, frame JPanel 12. So let me just take a screenshot of that. JPanel 12 was the one that I'm working on. So Alt print screen, back into my paint object, Control V, and then I'll go from 12 downwards. Copy, paste. So I've listed every single one of my GUI components here. There's a lot of pages, but that is more technically correct. Yours might not be as long as this. Then you might separate it a bit more. Now we get down to our methods. Now we know we always need our default constructor. So our GUI would definitely have a default constructor called positive, because it's public GUI, and then the explanation would be default constructor. You guys get the concept of why I'm doing this. You guys can lay this out a bit differently. I'm just doing this quite quickly. So now I'd say default construct dash initialize all fields. And then we would have to come up with other methods, and I'm going to work through this. I'm going to update this a bit later, because right now I'm not actually 100% sure what I need inside my GUI. I know I need the methods that is going on here, but let's get to my manager first. So on my manager class, I've got a situation. So I'm going to run this here, and I'm going to look at what buttons I've got here. The first thing I've got to do is I've got to add questions. So I know I'm going to have a method inside my GUI that says plus So when I tap that add question button, so having the GUI design helps me now to come up with what method. So here I would need to call add questions from manager class, sending through values from FRM add questions that user has entered, or something like that. Okay. Now you could do this in every single one in new tab. It's your guys' choice on that. Okay, so we're going to add questions. You'll then have the other one. So let's work with our manager with regards to add questions, and we've got our storage manager. Right now, I know I'm skipping a bit here, but I'm going to do the storage manager because this is more applicable to all of you, because you're all going to need the storage manager. Now, you'll notice in your guys' Google Share under IT General Resources under Code Segments, you'll notice that there is a storage manager class. And I'm going to ask you guys to actually copy that across into your working class of your project. So for us, we're doing the PAT step-by-step crossword project source, and inside I'm going to create a new folder called working. And inside that new folder called working, I'm going to paste the storage manager. That's all you guys need to do is in the code segments, you paste the storage manager through. You would then have the storage manager coded for you. Now, on there, you'll notice there that it's got a private connection con, it's got a storage manager on there. I have not commented this. This just has the methods in there, so you would be expected to comment it yourself and to determine what all it's about, but I'm going to explain it briefly in this video for you. The first one is the actual field, and the field is a connection, and this opens up a connection to the database. And in your default constructor, if you send through the name of your database, this then opens up the connection to the database. Now you will need to get this to work, you will need to import a whole bunch of things to it, but that's in a video. I'll place a link in the comment section below, not the comment but in the description to it. But there's how you can access a Java, MS Access database, and that'll be done during your coded phase, how you can get those to work. So the first one is just the constructor, and that will open up the connection. The second one is a query. This will return a result set. This result set you could then use. So this is when you select information from the database. The update is when you actually will add or change something in the database. And the update return ID is when you create an insert statement, but where there is an automatically generated ID. So you need to know the primary key item for this, but it's automatically generated, and that's what the update return ID method does. So those are the methods that you're going to have. You don't have to edit this at all. You're just going to input the class like I've done into here, and now we need to just indicate in our class diagram what we've got here. So now we're going to create our table. It's going to make it 2 by 2. The first thing I'm going to have is I'm going to have my fields, and then I'm going to have my explanation. And we know that in the field section, we're going to have our connection con, so negative connection con that we've got there. And the explanation to this is that stores the connection to the database to be used in methods. Okay, and then our methods, sorry, our methods, we would need a few other things. We would need the methods that we've got are your constructor, so storage, so it's for storage manager class, if you call it the same as what I've got. Okay, and this constructor would receive through a string database name and explanation, as you would then say story opens database with the name specified in the parameter. Okay, now what we need to do is we'll need to do the same for the different methods. So we'd have a query method. So query, the query will receive through an SQL statement, and we will be learning SQL in the next step of what we're doing. And we are then going to say run. Now this has got a return type. This is going to return a result set. Some people do it a different way around. Some people say now this is plus because it's public, and same thing with this. This is also public, so you must put the plus sign in front. So this will run the SQL statement and return the result set statement and return the result set. So meaning whatever is resulted from that SQL statement. So for example, in our, well, I'll explain it when I explain the SQL when we get into the coding more. This will be up here though, because you're going to be using this exact same one. The next one is the update one, and then the return, update, return. I'm not going to put explanations for all of those because I've verbally told you the explanations for all of them, but plus update, string SQL, this is void, so there's no return type, and plus update, return ID, which will also receive through a string SQL, and this will return an integer, and this will return the resulting auto number that had been generated for this. Okay, so that would be my storage manager done. Obviously I'd add explanations for those other two fields, and I'd make it formatted a bit prettier. I potentially would want to make every single one a new tab so I can indicate which one is there more, so I could just have a multiple layered table and work with that, but I'm not too fussed right now. So I've created my storage manager. Now we've got to go back to our other classes. So my entity class, and I can take a look at my database to help me with the entity class, because the entity class would be what, so if I go back and I go to my database that we designed, you'll see there that my entity classes is that I had a crossword with a question, answer, topic, and level. Now what we would do is, if I look at my strategy here of my GUI, in my GUI, you'll see that the user would choose a topic and level. When I click play, it will load all the questions and answers of that. So all I actually need is I just need the question and answers of that particular topic. So if I go back here, all I need is the question and answer, and it will load those question and answers from that topic level, topic FK, and the level. So I'm going to go to my system design document, and I'm going to design my table 2 by 2, sorry, and then the fields would be negative string. I must keep to the same naming conventions. You'll notice here I said manager man, and then here in my fields, call method add questions from manager class. Now this would be a void, which is fine, I don't need anything there. But now here later, I said here return int. So if I'm putting my data types in the front, I should keep to the same convention here as where I have my data types here. Like, I'm not too fussed about having it at the end or not, but then I should also keep to it over here as well. So if your data types are at the end, they should be at the end everywhere. If the data frames are types at the beginning, they should be at the beginning everywhere. I was kind of mixing between two different conventions at the same time, which is not very helpful. So we're going to have a string for the question, and we're going to have a string for the answer. And we could give the explanations. I'm not going to put the explanations in now because I'm not going to waste time in the video. Now, on there we've got to have the methods. Now the methods that we're going to need, we know that we need the constructor, so we're going to have plus Q and A, so the default constructor. We know that we're going to need a, now because we're going to work with an array of the answers are very important, I'm going to have a plus. Now I'm going to actually return, so get answer, which is my getter, but you'll notice I'm not actually returning it as a string data type, I'm actually returning it as a character array. This will allow me to then work with the characters individually when I generate the crossword. So I'm going to, my get answer will return a character array on there. For now, that's efficient for my question and answer class. But now my big one, my manager class, because my manager class is going to have to manage how everything's going to run. So I'm going to put this manager class on a new page because I know that it's going to require some space. So I'm going to create my manager class on a new page. I'm now going to start up the design. And the design I'm going to have here is I'm going to create a 2x2. I'm first going to indicate my fields, and then obviously we'd have explanation. I'm not going to go through the explanations now. And then we'd have our methods and explanations for that as well. Okay. So for the fields that I need, I know that I'm going to need an instance of my storage manager, so I'm going to put there negative storage managers to actually open it up from there. stman storage manager. I know that I'm going to need an instance of my actual questions answers, so Q and A. Now this is going to be a square brackets, which means it's going to be an array of, I'm just going to call it oh, I know I'm also going to have to give a getter for my questions here because I obviously have to get the individual questions, but that will be a string. You would need to refer to those and you have to get the questions. Alright, so Q&A, you can specify the size here, but we know we're just going to make it 500. You can put that in the explanation. I'm just going to make it 500 and then you load however many you've got to load. Now, on this note, the methods, we know we're going to need a constructor, so we're going to start off by saying manager constructor, and that's going to be positive because that's public. And we know that we're going to need to have a, in our constructor, we'll load, we're going to have, that will just be at the beginning where you open up your, when you create an instance of your class. We're going to have load questions, and on this load questions from the GUI, we're going to receive the level and we're going to receive the topic. And then this in our array would load our questions and our topic. And what we can do on this is our big method. This is our method that's going to require us to literally load all questions and answers of the crossword on there. Now, because this is loading the questions, I'm going to separate the method and saying plus generate crossword. Now, I could technically do it all in both in one, and I could get this one to also return the character array, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually just call it as a separate method. So this will return a 2D array with every single character that should be generated in this crossword. Yeah, sure. So this will be a 2D array. You'll notice it's just I'm putting spaces in there, not just because we can actually see it better on the screen now. So this will generate crossword, will return a character array, so 2D grid of what I've got there. So I'm kind of just thinking about how I'm going to do it. Now I know when I code this I'm going to need a whole bunch more methods, but the basic concept of this is just to come up with our general strategy of what I need to happen when. We would also obviously have to have a method to add questions, because we're going to have to be able to add question, and then that we would receive through the int level, comma string topic. This should be a small t. And we would need a string question, comma string answer. And this is to add a question into the database, and this would use your storage manager. We would then have plus add topic as well, So I'm going through, in my head, I'm going through this. Okay, what do I need to do? Generate a play. So when I do that, when I click the topic and I press play, I would need to get the 2D array. So I need to load the questions and then I need to generate the crossword. That's when I press play. But when I go add question or add topic, I need to run something different. Now we are not, we also still need to get the questions and get the down on, get the questions across, get questions down. So when we press play, we would need to load the crossword, but plus we need to load the questions across and the questions down. So you go through, it's a nice way to do it is if you designed your GUI first, you can go through your GUI and go step by step what you need to do. So also need a plus string get questions down plus string get questions across. Okay, now this would be void add topic, and again we would need I think it's a string topic. I don't actually know what else we got on there, but you guys can look at that if I did that wrong. But I'm going to add some explanations here just so to help you guys. Would initialize stman load questions would add questions and answers into the, now we know this part here we would add questions into the array, so we even can separate this into another method saying add Q&A, which would retrieve through string question okay. So what we can do is we can just create that there, so we're adding things as we go along. Would add the questions and answers into the array using add from the database that matches that level and topic into the array. I actually don't need, I technically might code this, but I don't need to put that into there. This would just be a separate entry over there. Now this method would generate a crossword yes, this is storing the down, so this will generate crossword, storing across and down into the field down. Okay, then return a 2D array of characters representing each line, each block in the table. Okay, now if I move on from there, oops. Okay, and then we could go get questions across, would return the get questions across, get questions down, would return get questions down, add topic, and so forth. So I'm not going to go through the rest of the explanations on here because that's not really needed right now. But you'll see that I've got the different statements along here. So what I've done here is I've created my my GUI code here. Created all my code along the line. My class should run the basic specs of what I need. So for example, in my GUI, when I run this, if I clicked on, I chose IT level 2 play, that would run this method, this method, this method. When I click the add questions and I press add, I would then run this method, this method, methods. Basically, you can run through your GUI and you can just say, okay, is there a method to get the across? Is there a method to get the down? Is there a method so when I choose this and I press play, it will do? So everything action-wise, you need to make sure that you have enough in your class diagram that it would allow it to run. And you'll notice in your mark sheet it indicates. So when you guys open up your mark sheet, which should be available under IT General Resources under Project 12 pad. This is a 2016, but it is the same. You'll see there that your class design diagram, it says class diagram is thorough. All fields and methods are presented well. Sub-methods are presented. Methods and fields are clearly related back to the specifications document. So you can clearly indicate it does everything that your program needs to do. And I've drawn up mine now. I'm going to try and get rid of this page break because we don't need to put a new page there. I'm just going to format it a bit better so it looks a bit prettier. Yeah. So the GUI class has taken up a lot of space, and that's because we're representing it there. So I could actually even change my order and have my GUI at the end. So that, for example, I could have my manager and my GUI and stuff in front of it. I actually might do that. Anyway, that's formatting later and getting your document looking pretty. Right now, hope this has helped you guys sort of how you would draw up your class diagram for your project. I know that I will need more methods. I'm 90% sure of it, but I've got the base structure of it going. The next video will go through on how to do the sequencing, which will link what happens when you do GUI and which methods will then be run. And we'll try to keep that as simple as possible. Have a good day. I'll find the stop button.